Okay, we'll move on to the council member items. Number 18 is the first one up, and that is Council Member Moser.
Thank you very much, Mayor Carr. I think that all of us cannot go a day without seeing on the news about fires, excessive heat variations, as we've seen up in the Pacific Northwest with melting wires and things like that. And we also see things here more locally. And so we were inspired, I think, by these concerns. Back in January, we went over our work plan. And one of the items that was brought up at that time was assessing the viability and economic benefits of instituting a climate action plan. And it was within that framework that I initially went to staff to find out, what are we doing? Because I went on our website and it was challenging to find all of the different things that we're doing in one location. Because they're in many different locations. But what I did discover in talking to staff with regards to climate and the environment and sustainability is that we are actually doing quite a few things. Many of those were already included on the item, including solar power projects, installing energy-efficient LED streetlights, supporting climate action policies that protect our beaches, encouraging development of electric vehicle charging stations, and many more things. In fact, Mr. McCord mentioned in public comments that many of these items are all in the general plan, and they are being proposed in an evidence-based way, which is wonderful. All of that being said, they are all disconnected and disparate. So I think that the value of creating a sustainable master plan is, one, to be able to join all of these things into one holistic and whole system approach. And we all know that what gets measured gets done. And so it's important that if we can bring the entire community along, have all of these things in one document, have the measurements there, this will allow us to really, provide a bold and broad long-term approach that encourages a prosperous and healthy community. It will also help us to mitigate uncertainty, leverage grants and funding mechanisms. If we don't have a plan in place, it will be more difficult for us when opportunities arise to get funding, to be able to get that funding, perhaps in front of somebody else who's also trying to get it as well. Ms. Brannon earlier in public comment said sustainability is now and not in the future. And I think that that's very important as well. This requires an urgent and immediate action. There's an urgent and immediate need for bold planning and action. A plan is both a noun and a verb, and we need to do the action and take that action immediately. Also, during public comments, one of the commenters asked why climate change wasn't specifically mentioned in the item. And I think that it's important to know, of course, this is part of that. Climate change is not the problem, though. It is a symptom, like our expanded fire season, like the severe temperature fluctuations, and also sea level rise. We are in a community that has just a beautiful, sensitive ecosystem and coastline that we must protect. But while we must protect that ecosystem, it's beyond that, because having this action plan in place will help us to save money, to save lives, improve the quality of life, and also improve our standard of living. I think oftentimes when we talk about sustainability and climate action, it becomes more of a partisan issue. And I think that what's important here is this isn't partisan to protect our coast. This isn't partisan to protect our children's future. The important thing here is to, again, look at this holistically, protect our environment, look at how this affects our economic interests, how we can advance our economic interests, also how we can incorporate our community health and wellness programs, and also elevate the equity and inclusion efforts. I know that that was something that got brought up before. The reality is that not everybody is affected by the challenges that we experience with the changes in our climate. in the same way. And so it's important that we look at how everyone is impacted by that. And those things include mobility, housing, transit, environment, infrastructure, and then again on the health and safety of our community. So with that, I am moving that our staff, that the council will help us support, that our staff move along and begin to create a sustainability master plan so that we can see what we need to do as we move forward in this very urgent goal.
Okay, so we have a motion by Moser and a second by Del Glaze. The speaker list is not working, so Councilmember Posey, go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Moser, for bringing this forward. You know, we did have a sustainability department and a sustainability plan, and we had actually sustainability achievements, but we know that we don't have that anymore. So I want to thank you for bringing this forward, and I did want to sort of dovetail on a couple of your comments, so bear with me because they're good at the end. You know, that we all talk about sustainability, and sometimes it's partisan, and sometimes it's nonpartisan, and sometimes it's bipartisan. And I think in this case, it's really bipartisan because some of us support it for different reasons. And I clearly support it for the practical and pragmatic reasons, the economic reasons. And to have this program in place, this document in place, really is critical because of, like you said, identifying grants and funding. But when we had a sustainability manager, what we were able to discover and qualify for was having the ability to buy the street lamps from SDG&E. And we were up against a critical deadline, and that deadline was discovered, found, and quickly brought to council that allowed us to buy 11,000 street lamps from San Diego Gas and Electric for practical and pragmatic reasons. What's that? Edison. What did I say? Did I say SDG&E? Oh, Edison. Sorry, Edison. SoCal Edison. So with that, for the practical and pragmatic reasons, we bought that. Allowed us to convert incandescent bulbs to LED for the environmental sustainability and really the economic sustainability. Incandescent has a 2,000-hour lifespan. LED has a 20,000-hour lifespan. So think about the labor and the man lifts you got to have, or the personnel lifts to get up there to change the bulbs. And it also allowed us to rent the real estate for small cell technology and other things that we don't even know about for communication, video, everything else to better serve our tourists. So this is an easy one to support for me. It is bipartisan. Maybe it's nonpartisan. I don't know. But I'm probably supporting it for different reasons. And maybe even for some of the same reasons. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Peterson.
So I guess I have some questions. I haven't seen a sustainability plan that doesn't, one, urbanize a community, two, make construction cost more with triple pane windows, solar, everything else, and you're trying to bring the cost of housing down. So I don't know exactly what you're talking about, sustainability, where those go. Community health wellness programs, that's vague. There's a lot of county stuff that we already seem to want to get involved in, and I don't want to get involved in more. And then the equity and inclusion efforts. Our job as a city here is to just be just, and that's just to look at everyone identical when they come in this place. It's not to put people in groups. It's not to give anyone priorities. It's just to treat every single person exactly the same. So I don't even know what this is. I know you hit a lot of, the children, the environment. You hit a lot of the, words used in this type of stuff. But with all this, whether it be you call it global warming, weather change, everything, I always look at the insurance agency and the lenders who have the actuaries aren't raising our insurance rate because of global warming. right now. I mean, the state is raising stuff because of their mismanagement of the power grid, but you can still get a loan, a 30-year loan for a house on the beach. So if it's going to disappear in 30 years or 40 years, I would think that wouldn't be a viable option. People couldn't get that type of stuff. So again, I always stick with, Eisenhower's farewell speech after the military-industrial complex. He said, don't base policy on science, basically, because science changes a lot. And we have a lot of good things in the general plan. Again, this is very broad, has a lot of big, a lot of happy words or whatever it is that you're doing here. But the sustainability, I've never seen one that doesn't end up costing more and put more regulations in. So I don't know if you want to address what exactly you're talking about. You probably don't have to. You have the votes here, but I won't be supporting it.
Councilmember Moser, did you want to address that before I go to Mayor Pro Tem Delglaze?
I will address, what Councilmember Peterson said regarding not basing policy on science because it changes. And I will just say that science changes because it learns, and that doesn't make it not valid to base policy on you have to base it on evidence and facts. And yes, sometimes the facts adjust because the science changes. But I think that it's imperative that that's how we base our next steps. Also, in preparing for this, I was looking at what some other cities are doing, and even our neighbor in Newport Beach, they are taking measures, and some in particular with regards to sea level rise, and creating policy with regards to requiring with their planning where they have to raise the height in the structure of the homes. And so those are things where, 30 years from now, I do want people's houses to be there, but it's perhaps going to be important that we kind of help that along and indicate, perhaps, as we create a plan, that those types of policy requirements might need to be there. So that way those houses are still there that are along our coast. So, ultimately, it's not just frilly and fluffy. In the end, there is value there, and we want to make sure that people's investments and properties are protected, and that ultimately our responsibility is to improve the quality of life and well-being of our entire community, and that is my imperative with regards to this effort.
Does personal responsibility come into it at all?
Absolutely.
So, but you're doing it from a government standpoint.
Well, I think it's
making it a requirement. That's my issue with it, right? It's your property. Do what you want with it. I don't need you telling me to put my house on stilts.
okay.
So, all right, that's it. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Delglaze.
Thank you. I would like to kind of back up here a little bit. I think Mr. Posey touched on it, but this city actually has been working on sustainability for quite some time. I was blessed to be working here at the time when, I know I was going to forget his name, the gentleman that
Aaron
was...
Clem.
Yes, thank you.
Aaron Clem.
That's who it was. And he came in and made some, I thought, very positive changes. The HVAC was completely redone and saved the city a bunch of money. We have the solar outside. As you mentioned, the SoCal Edison lights. And there was just a lot of things that kind of trickled down that made that decision so good. And I saw this when I first saw that you had brought this forward more as a plan like we did at the library at the beginning of the year, where it said we were doing strategic planning and asking for things to come together and understanding. There's a lot of state regulations coming up facing us real quick here, like the one that Mr. Posey mentioned about the 11,000 lights that we bought. Yeah, we almost missed out on that. And that's a real acknowledgement to Miss Tony Graham because she was stayed on top of it. But there was a lot of things like that. We have the battery in the basement of the city hall here. And no, I don't see it so much. I don't have to put solar on my house. I could if I wanted to. and there's opportunities for people to do so if they want to. I see this though more because, the state of California, there's a lot going on in the northern state that doesn't go on here, and vice versa. I think we've done an excellent job of storing a lot of water, for example. We have a lot of reservoirs here in the southern part of the state. They don't up there, okay? And they could use that for all their fires. I think bringing in mitigation for understanding how those could be managed better, that all falls under sustainability. And so I'm not as, I see this more of high level, and as the state does, mandate things that we have to do locally as a government, then we need to be prepared and have the best information to go forward with it. And I feel that we have that staff to do so now. Back then we were kind of, there was nobody here. There wasn't really a support. We did have an outside support, believe it or not, from the Huntington Beach Chamber. We had a sustainability program where we gave businesses here in town certificates for them updating. As a matter of fact, when you were talking earlier about doing housing here in Huntington Beach, the gentleman, the couple that created Primal Element, they started that in their kitchen. They have now 50,000 square feet, I think, over near Gothard. And he was the one that said to us, my employees drive like 2 hours to get here. Isn't there any way you could get housing? So I guess what I'm getting at is it's not just one thing, and it's not necessarily always a government mandate that has to be done. I just think some people really like living maybe in a more responsible way than maybe other people. I know in my neighborhood a lot of people are getting solar panels. Well, when your bill's like $70, I don't really think it's something I need to do. But as you mentioned earlier, Mr. Kalmick, about there was another benefit of getting the upgraded panel. People might look into that. Same as double pane windows and triple pane windows. I mean, it makes your heat bill lower. So there's a lot of offsets. I think it would be helpful for us as a city to have a sustainability plan, and that way homeowners or people who want to improve their buildings or whatever, they can do that. They can come to the city and see what's available. So thank you, Ms. Moser, for bringing this forward.
Thank you. Councilmember Kalmick.
Thank you, Mayor Carr. I'm going to just back my way through Mr. Peterson's comments because they're just wrong. Like, they're factually incorrect. So let's start with Sunset Beach. Sunset Beach, every single owner there owns their bulkheads. So it's personal responsibility. I'm going to spend the $100,000 to raise my bulkhead. My neighbor doesn't. My house floods. Right? There's a collective responsibility when you are talking about sea level vulnerability and coastal access, sea level rise, sea level vulnerability. Houses on stilts, same types of things. The capital markets have identified climate change as a legitimate issue. If you want to buy a house on the beach, yeah, they'll give you a 30-year loan, but guess what they're going to make you carry as well? Flood insurance. Owning a house on the beach, I am now very well aware of flood insurance. So it's something that the capital markets do understand. Shell, all the other companies are absolutely looking into this and have already moved or well ahead. Many, many companies are rolling with sustainability plans. Community health and wellness. Sustainable community health and wellness saves us all money, right? If we keep doing what we're doing, which is having the cops move our homeless around and not take care of them, we're doing it the most expensive way possible. So it makes economic sense to have a sustainable program, to make sure that our people are healthy, to make sure that we don't have people living on the street, and to make sure that we're doing it in the most efficient way. Triple pane windows, solar panels, urbanization, and that's just all scare tactics, right? Like, you're in a position to help make those policy discussions and policy changes. You're not helpless in that situation. So to say that, oh, this becomes urbanization and triple pane windows, we have that conversation. We are designing this plan to say that, oh, it's just going to have all that in it. It doesn't have to. We can set guidelines. We can do the work. It just sounds like we're willing to throw our hands up and say, no, it's going to have this thing because some consultant says so. Like, no, read the plan. The reason the general plan has a lot of the sustainability in it, because I did the work and I put it in there. It's distributed all across that document. It's in the environmental impact report and the mitigation measures. It's in the actual general plan itself. It's just disparate, and I think that the climate action plan process in the sustainability master plan draws all of those things together. And as Councilmember Moser said, qualifies us for funding because we have a plan we're leading that we are much more likely to get funding for projects if we have a full plan. And to understand why we have all of these different groups working within the city that are working on sustainability, either be it public works, community services, community development, to draw and drop a framework to hang and plug all of that stuff into just makes complete sense. It's going to take us some time, obviously, to get there, to really figure out what we need to be doing. And I think that staff, it'll take some time from data collection to kind of put stuff together. But I think the fact that we'll be moving forward on this, again, leading in Huntington Beach instead of following, brings businesses, brings residents to know that we are interested in clean water, clean air, paved roads because again, paved roads, lower gas consumption, lower energy consumption, smart city technology, making sure our traffic lights all talk to each other. Again, AQMD gives you grants for that type of thing for a reason. The Air Quality Management District finds you're sitting there idling. To move cars around more efficiently is good for sustainability and a good sustainable community. So I think that this is something that is not top down. This sets a framework for us for what we're already doing in this city, and I think ties a bow on it so that we can be recognized for it, and grant applications recognize it for it as folks want to move here and open their businesses here, because that's where the capital markets are going. So that's what I have, and I will be supporting this item. Thank you.
Thank you. And you said so many of the things that I was going to say, because I also sat on that General Plan Advisory Committee and was a part of those discussions. And, we are doing so many things right now to address sustainability. So this really is, like you said, it's an umbrella. It really touches on everything and brings everything together. And I also sit on the Environmental Quality Board for Cal Cities. And you're right, Barbara, there are so many state mandates coming down right now that it's a little bit dizzying. And we have, as a council, some of it's good, some of it's not so good, where we are pushing back on some of these mandates that just are not viable for our community, but at the same time, we want to embrace the ones that are. So I will be supporting it as well, because we as a city are doing so much. We declared to be a non-toxic city, 2 or 3 years ago? That would fall under this. Everything that we've done with the solar panels and with the light poles to, again, save money and to make money for the city. Mobility, homelessness, broadband. I mean, there's so many elements that we're already doing in the city. And my only question is, with this plan, there are so many cities that have already done this, and they've already put together a master plan. Do you envision us hiring a consultant of some sort, or do you think that the city manager can take the lead on this and basically put it together so that it can be relatively inexpensive for a city like ours that's already doing so much of it?
That's a great question. And so that's part of why I am asking staff to start on the beginning of this journey. I did speak with City Manager Chi earlier and asking, right now we're working on a mobility plan. How much is that costing us? And maybe Mr. Chi can talk about that a little bit. But with that, I don't know what's the right decision to have a consultant or have it be done in-house, but I think that would be something that they would present to us, and then we would be able to make a determination on that.
Mr. Chi, did you want to address some of the options that are available?
Yeah, for sure. If this is the council's direction tonight, what we would do is really pull all the staff together, take a look at what existing resources we have, what existing programs we have in place that might fall under this umbrella. I would suggest likely it would be important at some point to think about having a consultant assist with some of this work, given the nature of how sustainability master plans are developed. But again, based on the council's determination, we'll pull this all back in-house, do a little bit of work, and make sure to report back to the council on suggested options for moving ahead.
Thank you. I don't see any further questions, so I think we're okay to vote.
All right, the item passes 5-1. Councilmember Peterson voting no.
Thank you. We'll move on to the last item of the night, number 19, submitted by Councilmember Posey.